And that was us misfiring for about 10 minutes before we managed to actually start the CoNcast. Now that we are starting it, I have a device in my hand, and it goes like this.
I heard something, and it was really disappointing.
Yeah, it was actually my sonic screwdriver, which I just found under a
Oh, it did sound a bit like a sonic screwdriver.
You're going to have to sneak in a work in there?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to assume that worked flawlessly, and we're going to continue.
you can just put the volume... Because something came through. You just put the volume up on that bit.
Yeah, that's just the...
the
best intro we have.
Okay, everybody shut up a minute. Wow, was that a sonic screwdriver?
I hate you. I hate you with the fury of 1,000 suns.
Is that one of those that you can pick up from ThinkGeek?
Yes, that is in fact where I got it, I believe.
Right.
Actually, I got it as a birthday gift this year.
Is it a 10th or 11th?
11th.
Doctor. Yeah, the best sonic screwdriver.
Yeah. So, that was our intro today, and I'm not editing it, so we are already going to run long today, I can tell.
Awesome.
Wow, was that a sonic screwdriver?
It's just, blood vessels are popping in my forehead as we speak.
You love it.
Hey, let's do introductions, because we've got somebody new today, and it's Mooney. It is Mooney.
It is Mooney in the flesh.
Yes, that's right. Known to you folks who have been around Con as EvilEye. This is Chris Mooney, and I will probably be calling him Mooney through the entire show, because that's all I call him nowadays, and he's joining us.
Yeah, I've almost never heard my first name in any way, shape, or form here. It's always just Mooney.
No one uses my first or last name. So,
Aww.
Tiddles is my first and last name.
Oh, alright.
What's
Tiddles,
a tittle?
Tiddles. A tittle is one of these. Are you sure that's what you meant?
About.
Oh, I missed the inside jokes.
Probably all of our viewers got that.
The wonderful thing about Tiddles is Tiddles
tautology.
is wonderful things.
Yeah, baby.
So you've heard everybody now. Today we've got me, Tiddles, Laz, and for the first time, Mooney.
You're not Tiddles.
Dun 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 dun.
Yay! So let's get into it. Mooney, what you playing? What you watching?
Well, lately I've actually been going kind of old school. Actually, I was talking with Tiddles on Saturday, and that actually got me really crazy to play a lot of Morrowind again. So,
Yeah!
I've been going back into some familiar games here, and this time just trying to get a pretty solid playthrough without screwing everything up too much or killing the wrong people too early.
Well, you can always listen to... Well, assuming it didn't get cut in the edit, you can always listen to some previous podcasts where I probably have already told you some hilarious things you can do with enchantments in Morrowind.
I'm pretty sure I got that.
We'll splice
Yeah, I've
it into
been
this
definitely
one. Splice
exploring
it
ways
into
to
this
break
one.
the game.
Is that the one where you
paste
walk
it in.
through? Is that the one where you walk through swamps all the time instead of walking through forest all the time?
Not
pretty
really.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Well,
You can.
there's some... the thing I like about it compared to Oblivion is that it's pretty varied. And you've got... Oblivion is pretty much field and forest, and Morrowind, you've got some swamps, you've got some ashen bits, you got some villages made out of giant crabs. It's pretty cool.
Made of giant crabs?
Well, shells.
Oh.
I have to say though, it's still like my favorite game where it's just like, oh crap, I've just stumbled upon a new dungeon here. Let me just check this out. Let's just see what's going on in here. Like Skyrim has quite a bit of that, but I haven't played that a whole lot yet.
It's a pretty fun time. I mean, it's an older game and an older PC game, so it's got that kind of raw difficulty to it in certain respects. So I can really remember, going into dungeons where they were really too high level for me at the time, and you had things in that game that could drain your strength attribute, and that would lower your weight allowance. And so you end up not being able to move. You can't even move slowly in Morrowind if you exceed your weight allowance. So I'm just standing there.
Yeah, that's definitely happened to me already.
I can't drop my stuff, and this doesn't wear off. So how's this going to work?
That's just mean.
Yeah, I definitely was just like going along some town here, and then suddenly I just get attacked by like some bird, and it's just like, congratulations, you have hell joint. You can't hit anything now.
The cliff races, man. There's a whole saga throughout the series about the cliff races only appear in Morrowind, and if you read the books like DP does, you will eventually find out that the character you see at the beginning of Morrowind, who ushers you off the boat, goes on to become the hero of Morrowind, who vanquishes cliff racers from the land because everybody hates them so much.
That's
one of
pretty
those
impressive.
great pieces of lore.
I wonder, they should really put that encumbrance thing in Elder Scrolls Online, because that is the most innovative player killing methodology that I think I've ever heard. Wouldn't that be great if you're just running around the MMO and all of a sudden you can encumber somebody to the point that they can't move? And then this comes and beats
I think I would write a counter story to that say that because he removed all the cliff racers, then that's responsible for that being where all the dragons come into existence for Skyrim.
Probably.
It's natural selection. You can't clear out an ecosystem without something else rising up to take its place.
Yeah.
I have no idea what a cliff racer is, but it seems like that would be less damaging than having dragons everywhere you look.
Yeah, that is a fair assessment.
You know, the reason that I had to edit out all that stuff last time is because we turned it into a total Elder Scrolls podcast. So,
Right.
Well, why don't we just do that?
Because I've never played any of them.
Get on with it. I'm sure I'll probably...
Okay,
What do you
why
want
don't you
from me?
shut up and talk about what you're doing, Tiddles?
I released Sonic 3 Complete,
Yeah.
and then I fixed some bugs and released it
congratulations.
again.
Hello.
And then I fixed some more bugs and I released it again. And then I had some new stuff and released it again. And there's more stuff to do because it's a never-ending cycle. But it's out there. Go and enjoy it. It's got loads of new stuff and everybody thinks it's great. So
It's at tiddles.org.
/S3C.
You're an org? Alright.
I'm an orc and a net, baby,
He's-
but that's
he's-
not the story.
He's a massive org.
And a massive net. Whatever that means. I catch fish.
Yes. Oh. I'm already disillusioned with today.
This is the best podcast ever. Keep the pace, man. Let's go.
I know that I'm doing nothing, but I know that
Oh, come on.
I will have something to say about what Laz is doing. So Laz is gonna
Right.
go.
Well, we don't have TP. We don't have DP. We don't have DP.
For your butthole.
Okay, alright. We don't have DP with us today. So I know he'll be very disappointed to listen to us talking about a book.
No, he doesn't read any books that were made after He doesn't read any books that are written after 1950.
Oh,
So,
then no big deal then.
Yeah,
Because of the smell of the pages and the leather bindings and the...
Hey, I am one of those people.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
He has
What
many
is
leather-bound
this?
books.
Oh.
A room full of books. Anyway, I'm reading just one book, and it was written a couple of years ago, and it has a lot to do with video games because it's called Ready Player One, and it's a book by Ernest Cline. It's about a slightly dystopian future where there's an energy crisis and no fossil fuels anywhere in the world, and people in despair mind their time by playing a giant virtual simulation MMO called The Oasis. And this is 5 years prior to the start of the events of the book. The architect of the Oasis died and showed a video to the whole world telling that he had left an Easter egg in the Oasis, and the first person that finds it in the MMO becomes the new god of the Oasis and inherits his multi-trillion-dollar fortune. So
Sounds almost like Journey the book.
yeah, it's kind of like Journey meets Willy Wonka meets The Matrix. And it basically is so for 5 years there have been people that have devoted their lives to finding the egg. They're called egg hunters or gunters. And they are all obsessed with 80s folklore and films and video games because the creator of the Oasis was, and all of the clues to where the egg is have to do with 80s films and 80s video games. So there's some of the plot points that are involved in the egg hunt are things like they have to play a live action version of Zork. They have to perfectly reenact the 1982 film War Games. They have to do a jousting match against a D&D Lich King, and when I say jousting match, I mean they have to play the Stork versus Ostrich game Joust.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little sort of pandering to gamer culture, but It is extremely entertaining, start to finish. I somehow cared about the characters at the end of the book. And
It sounds like it would be a struggle to write a book where you care about the characters and is so kind of nerd culture heavy.
If you are a child of the 80s, as obviously I am, since I was born 3 months into that decade, or you have some level of affection for that period as a nostalgia type person, and everybody should because the 80s were awesome, even if you don't get all of it, you're going to kind of get the feel of it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was interesting to note that, you do kind of care about what happens to the characters offline, despite the fact that, the focus of the book and most of the, salient plot points happen in a virtual world. It kind of sneaks up on you in that way, and that's very cool. Now, some people may recognize the name Ernest Cline, probably not many. I think that Ready Player One is what really made him famous, but he was actually also the guy that wrote the movie Fanboys.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys seen that?
No,
I've heard about it.
I have. I mostly saw it because I think Kevin Smith was involved with the project, and
Yes.
and Kirsten Bell was in it. I'm sorry, Kristen Bell was in it, and I love both of those people. So
That's an interesting lead-in, Laz. We'll use that later.
well,
the
there is
author.
a point to make, and I don't know much about the book or the author, so I don't want to criticize them because I'm sure they're grand things. But there is a sort of there's a tendency with kind of nerd culture that it kind of doesn't take itself at all seriously, and it's sort of almost kind of self. I've got no words today. It's sort of got, it's kind of a self-hating culture. It's got a lowly culture. You see, it's sort of bottom of the. So when you get a kind of, hey, this guy's written a book for nerds, and he's a nerd, and it's got nerd things in it. Even
all right, well,
Okay.
I guess just to close, this is a very entertaining, interesting novel about Willy Wonka, the video game book, where it's super 80s and super entertaining, and if you like books and video games, I recommend you read it.
it does
Called
sound good.
Ready Player One.
I'll probably give it a go once I remember to read anything. Like the instruction manual. Should do that first.
I'm not even going to ask an instruction manual you might have that you need to read.
It's one of those things, I would say there should be more to the video game story that you didn't hear about. That's one of those things. What was I reading the manual about? You don't know. You can make it up. Make up your own story. It's more fun that way.
We could just ask the listeners to do that for the entire podcast. Choose
We'll
your
just-
own
we'll just
podcast
not
adventure. If you want us to move on to today's topic, press 1 now.
Two.
Now, I'm going to assume that everybody did press 1 because we're going to move on to the topic now. Today's topic is, something that has become a huge thing, not just in gaming, but in media in general over the last year or so. And it's crowdfunding for projects. So sites like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, things like that. And we're going to talk a little bit today about, some cool Kickstarter projects that maybe we did or didn't back, or ones that we've heard about, or ones that are a massive abuse of the system, all kinds of stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I know that we've got 3 people here who have backed a Kickstarter or 2 over time, and 1 person, Mooney, who
Yeah.
really knows Jack.
The only thing I know is
situation.
that, I heard Veronica Mars got, a crap load of funding or something
back
like
to
that.
back to Kristen Bell somehow.
Well, there we go.
There
Let's
we go.
start there because that is one of
If
the
only we
more
could-
famous ones.
If only we could fit these segues together somehow.
Yeah, talking about them like I just did. Shut up, Tittles. You never
wish
even
I hadn't.
watched Veronica Mars, so you shut up.
I did.
What?
I watched about 5 episodes of it.
Why
So
did you
there.
stop?
Because they stopped showing it on E4 in the mornings.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
This-
That's actually a pretty good
I'm-
reason. But yeah,
really
Laz?
don't.
I think you know the most about the concept, really, and what little there is to actually know about the core concept. So, for our listeners who are not familiar, and Mooney,
Yeah, so you can
let-
basically explain it as if I was a child.
Yes, do that. That's what
Okay.
I'm getting at. Okay, here's an editor's note. We realized after we recorded this that you really probably didn't need an explanation as to how everything works, so we're just going to make this incredibly silly for a while.
All right, now when people make movies or video games or TV shows, normally normally they have to talk to people called producers and convince them that this is something that can make money. And sometimes the producers will give them money to make the thing, and sometimes they won't. But sometimes producers just aren't really willing to work, and it's hard for people to make the shows and games that they want to make. So they turn to services like Indiegogo and Kickstarter and make something called a pitch, where they talk about their idea and why it should be made, and then regular people like me and you can donate money so that project can be made. And the more money you donate, the more little prizes or bonuses that a backer might receive from the project. Now, this Kickstarter is probably the service that's synonymous with crowdfunding, and Kickstarter received a huge boon a little over a year ago when Double Fine, makers of games like Psychonauts and Brutal Legend and The Immortal Costume Quest, all of this did a Kickstarter that was called Double Fine Adventure, saying, hey, we want to make an old school adventure game like we used to do, but producers are unwilling to fork up the money for it, so we're using Kickstarter. And Double Fine Adventure was outrageously successful, and made, I think, right around $4 million when they were asking for something like $200,000. Hello? Is anyone else here?
No, we're
okay.
So to look at it looks like Double Fine Adventure.
It's called yes,
$3.3 million.
All right, okay, my numbers were off. I actually did not give Double Fine Adventure because I was leery of the whole Kickstarter process. But now that I've given to a couple and one or two Kickstarter games have come out to some success, I sort of wish I had, and I might just end up buying Double Fine Adventure, which is now called The Broken Age. I'll probably buy that on Steam when it comes out or shortly thereafter.
I was just about to ask. So most of these games make their way to like Steam or something like that?
Yes, it's some of them are sold through, just proprietary services. A lot of them make their way towards Steam or GOG or something. Probably I think the easiest example to point out for a Kickstarter game that actually was released successfully is FTL, which is a fun little sort of starship roguelike game that came out late last year and has been doing very well on Steam. And it was one of the earliest Kickstarter successes. But the important thing to note about Kickstarter, in particular as a service, is that 10% of the money goes to Kickstarter itself, so the developers or whatever are only getting 90% of the pledge money. And also, people can, of course, pledge however much they want, and there's usually a sort of little tree of rewards that pledges receive. For games, typically a low reward tier is a digital copy of the game when it comes out, and a higher reward tier might be a t-shirt or a spot in the special thanks credits of the game, and sometimes they can get pretty elaborate and crazy. But the important thing to note is that Kickstarter does not guarantee anything. It is, by backing one, you are essentially gambling. There is, they don't, if their product is funded and your money gets spent, they don't technically owe you anything, and have nothing really to show for it other than their reputations. And there hasn't been a huge high-profile case of it yet, but there have been a couple cases of Kickstarters, getting funded, but then not delivering, and people lose their money. That's just how it works, and that sucks. But luckily, it hasn't happened to such a large group of people that the service has, lost face in a big way.
There, that was fun. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
I'm actually looking at the site now. It's kind of neat that they have some like categories for like even the city you're in and stuff like that, like what people are doing near you.
But Double Fine Adventure really opened the floodgates, and now it's not even in one of the top 5 grossing Kickstarters anymore. Just to throw out a couple gaming-related ones, there was a sequel to the Shadowrun franchise is actually supposed to come out very soon. There's also a couple spiritual sequels to old computer RPGs like Project Eternity and Torment Tides of Numeria are two that are supposed to be in the tradition of your Baldur's Gate or your Planescape Torment, and both of them did extremely well. That one's coming out.
I would definitely be interested in that Torment game.
The Torment Kickstarter did astoundingly well, and they raised about $4.1 million on Kickstarter for a $900,000 goal.
It's not just individual video games. If you've heard of the Ouya, that was actually also kickstarted and drew in over $8.5 million. So if you have something that people want to buy into, it's there is no lack of the way that this works. It's interesting because like Laz mentioned, it's an investment thing, not a purchase, not a guarantee, anything like that. And like any investment, it could go north or south pretty quickly. But it's also an investment that is socially networked, and it's very easy to tell your friends about it, have them contribute. It's very easy to share it on social media to try to drum up more support and keep the ball rolling, even whether you've actually backed it yourself or not. And that makes it really interesting for things like this that wouldn't get media attention, wouldn't get investment through traditional means, but would actually grab a lot of eyeballs through virality.
Well, you say investment, but it's important to note that it's an investment where you're going to get back a product, but you're not looking at investing to get your money back or anything like that. No.
Right, you're investing to get something that you want, even if you have to pay a little bit more when it actually shows up.
If their target amount is not funded, then no one gets anything. Everyone has their money refunded, and the creator of the Kickstarter does not get any money at all. So they have to
probably throws himself off of a bridge.
Right.
That Dragon's Den, basically.
Yeah, I like that as like a unique solution as opposed to all the AAA games. Which don't get me wrong, I have a lot of AAA games. Like I'm a Blizzard fanboy through and through, but it's always nice to find like the little gems and the stuff that just turn it on its head, rather than buying a $60 game and then paying $15 a month and then just offering you other stupid services for just ungodly prices and saying, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, even though it's what everyone wants.
Well, speaking of little gems, how about Tittles, that Dreamfall Chapters Kickstarter, which you led me to a while back?
Yeah.
I-
You're
Okay.
almost certainly not familiar with The Longest Journey or Dreamfall because you're some kind of cultural ignoramus. But
I have that on Steam.
have you
I
played it?
Longest Journey, that is.
You should play it.
I played the first 10 minutes of it.
Yeah, everybody's played the first 10 minutes of it and they get bored by the lesbian landlady and they never play it again. But there is more to it than a lesbian landlady.
It's like you're looking into a window into my brain.
There is more to it. There's a lot more to it, and if you can suffer TLJ feels a little clunky today gameplay-wise, but it's a great story. It's very well written.
It is a fantastic story, and
If-
I was
if-
never one for
if
a
you
point-and-click game.
If
But
you like Final Fantasy for the story, and you want to play games with a good story, you should invest some time in this. I thoroughly recommend it. And
Yeah,
anyway, this game was made in something like 1998 or so, and there was a sequel of sorts, Dreamfall, that came out in 2006, I think. So long time between releases, and in the meantime, the company that produced it really started focusing on MMOs. The Secret World, if I'm sure you've probably heard of, was them, and Conan was
Right.
them. And at the end of the day, well, I'm probably making a lot of this up in my head, but the way I see it, the producer said, "Okay, this is great. We've got a load of MMOs. When are we going to make some more Longest Journey?" And they're like, "Well, I was thinking about making another MMO, actually." He's like, "Right, that's it. We're going to make our own company with hookers and blackjack, and you're going to license my story to me." And then they did a Kickstarter, and it got lots of money. Yay! And they're going to make a sort
yeah,
of a new Dreamfall, and everybody's going to be happy because it finished on a cliffhanger. It was like, damn, that's the end. Hell, man.
that was the first Kickstarter that I ever backed personally.
Mm.
After
okay.
you introduced it to me, and this wasn't that long ago. This was what, 3-4 months ago. That
Yeah,
was?
it was, this
Very
year,
recent. But yeah, having played the first two games in the series, which calling it a series is a little bit of a misnomer because we've got a point-and-click adventure for the first one, and then kind of a 3D point-and-run adventure
Yeah.
for the second one.
I mean, they
both-
tried to modernize the concept, I think, in a way with Dreamfall, and also set it as it's not strictly a sequel as such in its own right, completely to Longest Journey, but it's very much in the same universe.
Yes.
And has some of the same characters without saying too much, but
Yeah, and I mean, it's really, for me, it's kind of the perfect example of why crowdsourcing is and should be a thing, because these are games that didn't make billions of dollars. We're not talking about a Call of Duty here, but the fan base was rabid enough, and it's the kind of thing that you're going to see again with Veronica Mars,
Yeah.
or any number of other things where they have a very rabid but small fan base that is willing to throw in for this, and essentially in some cases even kind of pay for the game twice. If you threw in $50 to the Longest Journey Kickstarter, you're probably going to be paying another $50, unless you got one of the rewards that is a free copy of the game, etc.
yeah,
etc.
I think
But-
at that level you're pretty much guaranteed a free copy of the game.
Yeah,
as well, from
okay,
what I
so
recall
that's
from
a
their
bad
rewards.
example.
It's
I
not.
get it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's never guaranteed, and but I think
I've always
their
wondered if we've
reward
maybe
structure
entered some
was-
sort of era where just shows and things like that never die. Like it just goes under, and then everyone just keeps picking it back up again. And
If they
like Arrested Development just came back, Futurama just came back, or it's been
Well,
back for a
just
while.
finished again.
And Futurama just died.
I mean,
again,
Family Guy
so-
way back in the day.
Yeah,
all that
if they're
stuff.
if they're successful enough to plant that initial seed, I would agree that they never really die, but some fail early enough. Hope that they mostly do die.
And probably should.
Is there a danger here though that obviously a lot of these series have a lot of kind of fan reaction behind them of wanting to support them and bring them back to life or keep them alive. But is there a danger in that by not letting the kind of natural turnover that's happened in the past go on, that you don't see so many exciting new things coming out? Because people know that if you're going to get AAA kind of blockbuster funding, you're just going to make something generic or whatever anyway, to put it in the most cynical possible sense. And if you're going to get Kickstarter crowdfunding, then you're going to rely instead on something you know people are going to back.
Well,
Kickstarter
does not only exist to revive old, lost, but popular labels.
Well, no, indeed.
If it were, Firefly would be back by now.
Well, yeah.
Good point.
But what I'm saying is, if you imagine the amount of money that was raised for that Veronica Mars Kickstarter, if you imagine that was, instead of the guy who made Veronica Mars, it was somebody you hadn't heard of, and instead of Veronica Mars, it was a young lady detective or some similar concept or some unrelated concept you hadn't heard of, would they got the same amount of money towards it? Would they got funded? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe it would, with a bit of creative work.
A lot of Kickstarter projects are new things, and they're, instead of being sold on the promise of, oh hey, this is that old IP that you love, it's being sold on the promise of, hey, that pitch and that trailer and that concept art sounds really interesting. So sure, I'll throw in $25 for a PDF instruction booklet and digital copy of the game. And looking at the 5 projects I've backed, none of them, other than Veronica Mars, are sequels or anything. So it's, okay. I think it's, you can use it as that platform to try and get multi-million-dollar funding for a forgotten IP, or you can just try to get a few $1,000s or a few tens of thousands of dollars to get your dream project off the ground, whether it's a retread or something original or whatever. But now that Double Fine Adventure opened the door, and all of these other successful projects like Tides of Numenera and Veronica Mars have been so successful, there has Kickstarter. People are checking Kickstarter for new interesting things every day, and there are blogs and probably podcasts devoted to telling people about new Kickstarter projects.
That's what we're going to do from now on.
Yeah, and
all Kickstarter all the time.
This might be terrible to ask, but is there any like assurance that these companies are actually producing the games and stuff like that? Not just pitching an idea and say, hey, give me money, and then they just run off and say, oh, it just didn't take off.
Yeah, there is no guarantee like that.
You know, these people who say they're making a film to get tax breaks and, you know, investment initiatives and that sort of thing, and they have no plans on doing it. Now they've got a double avenue. They can make a Kickstarter for it as well and rake in a load of money. It'll never happen.
God, you are just a scammer in every episode now, aren't you?
Yeah, there is the possibility for that happening. But I mean, it would be big news if a Kickstarter just ends up fleecing people out of tens of thousands of dollars, or dare I say more than that. But it hasn't happened in a large enough dollar amount yet for people to really revolt. And there haven't been very many deliveries on Kickstarter promises yet, because not very many of these projects have finished yet. I mean, FTL, I think which I mentioned earlier, I think is the highest profile example.
Yeah, boy, it's a shame that Kickstarter wasn't around when Corda's project was going on strong on Con there. Maybe he got a little extra incentive to get it.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah, it is funny that you should mention that, because his current project, which is actually a film that is in process, he did put that on Kickstarter, and I have backed it twice. The first time awesome. It actually fell just a little bit short of the goal, so it didn't get funded, but then they recreated it with some different parameters, and it did successfully get funded this time, so hopefully he is working on that hard as we speak.
Wow, good for him.
Cool.
Or sipping pina coladas on a beach somewhere.
I still plan on getting him in here for a CoNcast at some point.
You can edit that out then, that's fine.
Yeah, we can put him to the sword on it. The sword? Did I say
sword?
Sword!
Sword to secrecy.
Sword and sorcery.
I think in theory, like, the crowdfunding mechanism should be the kind of purest form of capitalism. It should be pure supply and demand. Somebody comes up with something that they're willing to supply, even if it's a couple years down the road, and the people that think that's a good idea will give them money to make it happen. The people that are trying to push things that aren't any good won't get the money, and therefore they never get made.
You're cutting out the middleman, basically, aren't you? You're avoiding... Yeah. It's like not having an agent looking at CVs who doesn't actually know what also, the employer wants, but they're just going to look for certain keywords and forward people. You just cut that out, man. You just cut out the producers who are trying to cater to this alleged mass market, and you get the people who are going to watch the thing to put their own money towards it.
Go on.
Here is the pessimist perspective, because I've just said something nice about it. That can't be allowed to stand.
I wanted to say more nice things, but
you can say them as a counterpoint and drum me into the ground. But here is the pessimist's viewpoint. If you ever want to see anything nice again, you now have to pay over the odds for it yourself.
Well,
it's the inverse to the Humble Bundle.
Well, I mean, okay, I did not give to the Double Fine Adventure Kickstarter. But and this is a theory. I mean, Broken Age could suck, but I am probably going to buy it sometime after it comes out. So even though I didn't, give to the Kickstarter, I wasn't a backer, I'll still enjoy the product. So it's not, nothing that you like will ever be produced ever again unless you gamble. It's more like, well, just more things are going to be. There are more avenues to production, so more things will be produced. And as a consumer, you can never give to Kickstarter, but still reap the benefits of it by just buying the products that it produces.
You can, but if there aren't enough people who take the attitude that you need to give to these projects to get them funded, then it would stop working.
And that's why I think what makes it fun for a lot of people is there is, that element of game to it where, I'd like to have this, but I don't want to give them any money, so I'm going to roll the dice and hope that other people kick in, and then I can still get it.
To me, I do think it is a good idea, and don't get me wrong, it's my duty to present the most pessimistic viewpoint. But there is genuinely a side to it that is kind of, it is in a way a reaction to industry being purely focused on numbers and revenue and missing out far too much on artistic integrity.
Well,
these are things that are being funded because people want them. And if enough people want them, producers somewhere should be picking them up.
I like that you brought that up because it's one thing that I did want to hit before we drop this topic. And I think it's a question that's going to make people go, oh, yeah. What would happen if for some reason Square Enix decided to get in on this? What would happen if they came in and said, oh, you want Versus 13? You want whatever the hell
Final
Versus
Fantasy
is?
7 Remake!
Exactly. That is the logical conclusion of
that. I mean, people would view that with a lot of suspicion and probably apprehension because, like, hey, you guys are already on the producer side of things. You don't need our money. You should just make that yourself anyway. I don't think you're going to see a Square Enix or Activision or EA or Blizzard Kickstarter anytime soon.
This is the thing. I mean, there's already some of them I see out there, and I already kind of have that sort of twinge of, you should be able to do this without me giving you a load of money anyway.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of those.
Established game studios and film studios, like, just get on with it. Just do it. Don't stop bloody gouging me for cash.
I'd like to give two examples of Kickstarters that where a lot of people took that attitude, and it helps because there are also two particularly unusual Kickstarters, and they're from the same producer, so to speak. The popular webcomic Penny Arcade has done two Kickstarters in the past year. One was last year where they asked for $2 million. And if they hit, well, actually, I think their target was lower than that. But one of their big end goals was if fans can back it up to $2 million, then Penny Arcade would not have any advertisements on it for a full calendar year. And eventually, other stretch goals are what they're usually called for making it above that $2 million. Where if this raises $2.5 million, then we're going to fund this web series. And there was a very detailed tree of additional content that Penny Arcade would produce if they were able to reach certain funding goals. And as a result, Penny Arcade hit that anti-advertising goal, so they're not going to advertise for a full year. I forget when the exact starting date of that year was, but it was clearly written out. And they also produced a very popular web series called Strip Search, where they're looking for talented comic strip artists. And a lot of their content for the 2013 and 2014 are going to be funded from that Kickstarter project. And the second Kickstarter that Penny Arcade did is actually one of the 5 Kickstarters I've given to. But Penny Arcade used to run a podcast called Downloadable Content, and so Penny Arcade said, "Hey, we want to revive downloadable content, but to do so, you guys need to support us." So they decided to post a Kickstarter with a whopping $10 goal, and at $10 we're gonna start the DLC podcast up again. So obviously they were planning on doing that anyway. But by pledging different amounts of money in their funding trees, they would give you archives of old episodes, or they would give you outtake reels, or additional Penny Arcade merchandise. Basically, it was pay however much you want for whatever prize tier they have available. And the more you pay, the more elaborate and the more content we'll put in the old podcast. And of course, they funded about $200,000 of their $10 goal for something like a 20,000% completion percentage. But those are 2 unusual ways that Penny Arcade has successfully employed Kickstarter. And even though Penny Arcade's not exactly a production juggernaut like Activision Blizzard, but some people were saying, man, these Penny Arcade guys are really successful. What the hell do they need Kickstarter for? But their defense, and I'm inclined to side with them, I guess, because I'm an insufferable optimist, was that they basically wanted their fans and readers to determine the amount of content that Penny Arcade delivers and to say how much they're willing to pay for that content.
Well, look, here's the thing. I mean, I think the point I was making that was frowned upon the first time, it kind of goes back to the point I made later, which was, I think what I was saying about you will never see nice things again is that having nice things in a way up to now has relied on some producer or some guy with a lot of money seeing the artistic value or the merit in something beyond dollars, and I wonder if those people will be more inclined to say, you want to do that stuff, go to Kickstarter. And I'm torn on it because I like the idea that stuff can be funded without having to go through and get the idea that some benefactor somewhere out there is going to support
Great
it.
expectations.
But on the other hand, it does. The people with money are always going to make this decision. If it's always down to individuals to donate, then it's going to be the people who can donate who decide what gets made, and that doesn't necessarily give you quite as broad of a cross-section as one would hope. If that became the only way you would ever get anything funded, I don't know. I'm just looking into a dystopian future. That's the way I see things.
Well, I think the middle ground between those two things is, where things are eventually going to settle. I think, it's still a growing process. The thing that I'm thinking of in terms of AAA type companies, like Square Enix, is that maybe they're, well, yeah, okay, I know that you were about to say, oh, they're still AAA, but
their credit rating has been badly downgraded.
That's another topic for another time. The thing that I can see this happening is that instead of getting people to throw in, $5, maybe a company like Square Enix starts treating it a little bit more like a pre-order with direct distribution. You want a Final Fantasy VII remake? Okay, give us $50, but when we get funded and when we do it, you get the game for free. And
Yeah,
then
it would be $50 though, wouldn't it? With them, it's
No,
minimum
well, not always.
donation to get any reward because it's Square Enix. They sell mobile games for $20. They don't understand anything modern. There's no point. If
Well,
they did it, they would be laughed out of court because they would do it wrong.
$50 is a thrown out there number, but that's still the going rate for a AAA game.
Yeah.
It's expensive over there, man. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they used to be worse. I paid $80 for my original copy of Final Fantasy III for the SNES.
Yeah,
and what are you gonna do?
The SNES days were pricey times, man.
But I mean, on the other side of that, I have thrown away probably over $100 on things on like just apps on my phone that I have absolutely no use for, and tried once and was like, "This is crap," and like I returned it, and sometimes they gave me my money back, and sometimes they didn't.
Well, okay, so Tittles, I'm probably going to leave you out of this because I can't imagine that you can come up with anything that Square Enix would do that would get you to pay money at this point. But the rest of you guys, and think about something that Square Enix could do for you right now that would make you say, okay, yes, I will pre-order that. Now, would you be just as likely to pay to a Kickstarter if
No, I have got
doing
one.
that?
I have got one.
Okay, well, we'll get to you in a second then. Now I don't even know what my question was. Would you be just as likely to pre-order it in a store or on Amazon, or Amazon, as it were, as you would be to do a Kickstarter if you thought that if it got funded, you'd go ahead and get that game anyway, whether it was free or for another $10 or whatever? And is there anything that the company could do that if they went that route, it would pique your interest, or is it just something that a company like Square Enix can't do in your eyes?
I think there would have to definitely be a pricing balance that would really have to be, figured out, and it might take too long before that to happen. But, if it depends. Like, I guess it depends on how like if they're just gonna say, okay, what do you guys want, and that would be this, and unless I could just say like, hey, I want another Chrono Trigger or something like that, and then I would be probably more inclined to do something like that, but not if they're just like, what, we want to do a Final Fantasy VII remake for the, yet again.
I'm in a similar boat. I mean, I would pay attention to something like this, but the project would have to be right, and the price would have to be right.
I just gotta say this. No. The whole point of this thing is that you can support projects that have no chance of being greenlit on their own. I'm not getting into some game with established producers going, you want it? Well, you'll have to pay for it before we even start making it, and then we might not even finish it. How'd you like them apples? And it might be rubbish.
Yeah,
and also, to go back to my point about too much democracy, if you like, if you want to put it that way. Let's change the model a little bit, and let's say EA comes out and says, right, we're going to put out a load of games out here for you. You can put your money towards whichever one you want. Whichever one gets the most money, we're going to make it. Now, if you put Mass Effect out there, and you put Dragon Age out there, and you put some nice indie game out there, and then you put Call of Duty out there, which I know is Activision, but shut up, it's a good analogy. Which one do you think they would pick that would get funded? Here's the Kickstarter I want from Square Enix. If you raise enough money, we will fire everybody in charge of our company and bring back all the people who made games in the 90s.
Well, why would you even need to give them money? And they're already, losing executives left and right.
But yeah, they're not gonna get someone creative and intelligent back in. They're gonna get somebody who used to work as a vice director at EA.
It's funny because in the back of my head, while I was listening to you guys answer that hypothetical that I threw out there, the thing that immediately came to my mind, especially when Mooney said something about Chrono Trigger, was, okay, if there was a Kickstarter for a Final Fantasy Tactics proper sequel, not one of the advanced games, or if there was a Kickstarter to restart the Chrono Trigger series, and they also threw in that they would try to use some of that money to lure old employees back to the company, I could see a lot of people going for that, even people who are very cynical about
I can see
No,
people
obviously
going
they
for
wouldn't
it.
be able to do a lot of that stuff. That would be setting themselves up to disappoint a lot of people. But that sort of thing would
So
really
day-to-day
sweeten the deal.
business. The I
Or,
can see a lot of people going for it, and that's what worries me, because there's absolutely no reason that they should. There is no reason that you should put your money out there when the company, in reality, is throwing good money after bad a lot of the time.
Yeah.
What are they doing with all the money they already have? Do
18
something
versions
good
of
with
Final Fantasy IV.
It's just, if you can't trust them to make the right decisions of what to put out there to begin with their own money, how can you trust them to make a good product if they
So
don't
don't
even
trust them
understand
and don't give
why
them
they
money.
should be making it
Yeah.
anyway?
And then let them learn a hard lesson from it. And
But that's not how it's going to work. People are gullible.
Yes,
Yes,
people are gullible,
yeah, that's
especially
true.
Square Enix fans. All of you listening to this, gullible. Yeah. Anyway, one last thing to hit before we wrap up shop today, and that's something that Laz pointed out to me in IM earlier today, and I can't read the calendar well enough to know. By the time we record again, E3 will be over.
Right.
So
We sure time the schedule well.
Yeah. Oh, let's go around the table real quick and see see if there's anything that Square Enix might be able to do for you in E3 that would make you happy.
Nope. Next.
That was easy.
Okay. No, there's nothing I can already think of in my head, but I think that's the point. They should do something that's actually going to surprise me.
Sure.
In a good way.
Are you saying that, if they just clarified the plans that they've been sitting on for years, which would theoretically give them the opportunity to move on to different things? Would that be
not even just
enough
that.
for you?
Just come and tell me something you're going to do for me that I'm going to like. I don't know what it is yet, but just think of something different and good for a change instead of, we're going to make another game of random battles.
We should start up a Kickstarter in order for you to figure out what you want. If everybody gives you $5, you'll sit down for an hour and figure out what you want.
But that's not the point. Even with Kickstarters, somebody pitches something to you and you decide whether you want it. If I was going to decide what Square Enix should be doing,
I'm kicking myself right now.
I should go and sit in the boardroom and decide it. But I don't. I'm not that guy. I don't have that creativity. They should put someone up there who does and have them create a concept that I will enjoy.
So, Mooney, what do you want to see at E3?
Well, was it last year's E3 that they showed the new graphics engine that they were demoing? Or was that last year? I can't remember.
That was the first time it appeared. It's appeared
I would be interested to see that, but maybe not for a Final Fantasy title, just to see what they would do with it. I don't know. I know this is probably slapping everyone in the face that says that graphics are everything, but I don't know. It would just be interesting to see, because at least they're working on something that's maybe slightly different, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's completely the same. But I don't know. I'm one of those rare, weird people that likes Final Fantasy 13, so sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're on Con, man. Everybody here laps that stuff up. I don't know.
Yeah, we do have some sort of reverse opinion on that game at Con. It's really strange.
Standing outside the realm of speculation for a second, Square Enix's marketing team has told us that they're gonna hold an event on the first day of E3.
They just love announcing announcements.
We called The Future of Final Fantasy, and it will involve a Final Fantasy game for the PS4. But other than that, they're just saying, please be excited for E3. Please wait for us to tell you more.
Come on,
the usual thing. Yeah,
is that a direct quote? Please.
Please be excited for E3 this year is a direct quote from their conference in February.
Wow.
And now they're basically just saying, hey, we promise we'll show some stuff at E3, and even if it's not necessarily the Final Fantasy VII PS4 remake or Final Fantasy Tactics 2 for online download that I want, it's gonna be something. And it is at 9 a.m. Pacific time, so that's noon Eastern or late afternoon for Europe, whatever, depending on
is that on the
where
11th?
you are.
Is that right, or is that the 12th?
That's the 11th, which is
11th,
which is
okay.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's at E3 is a Tuesday through a Thursday this year. Is that normal? Because I seem to remember.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it is. I believe that's how they did it last year, anyway.
I
That's as
guess
far
it's
back as my memory goes.
Yeah, I think it's the consumer-focused ones, like old E3 and current packs that last a whole weekend plus.
Yeah.
I guess.
I
Whatever.
wanna
I'm just gonna
know
follow
what-
it on Twitter.
Going back to one of our previous podcasts, Microsoft think they're gonna say something that's more interesting to gamers this time. So I'll be interested to hear what that is, and hopefully they'll be clearing up some of the used game-related rumors as well.
In the next
And-
Call of Duty, you get a dog and a cat. Boom.
And
Sold.
a used game.
A used cat.
The used game is the least likely of the three.
The cat even stares at you passive-aggressively.
That's every cat. You
The
don't even
loading
need to give
screen
that
is
away.
just a cat judging you.
I have a cat judging me as we speak. I don't need to get a Call of Duty game for that. But that's interesting. To me, I'm always interested to see what Square Enix are going to come up with, even if it ends up being a little bit underwhelming. And I think it's probably going to be a little underwhelming. But at the same time, I don't have any current interest in any next-gen machine whatsoever. So regardless of what it is, odds are it's not going to be on a device that I own, because they're definitely not going to show up with a bunch of mobile games at E3. Even they know that they would get abused for that.
But
So-
Josh, it might be on the Wii U.
Nothing is going to be on the Wii U.
I know.
That was the worst
Hilarious.
prize I've ever won for doing nothing.
If you could find Mario Kart for the Wii, we'd be playing that.
Well, yes, and I have found it. Unfortunately, I have
Yep.
to also buy a Wiimote to play it because it won't use my Wii U pad to control it.
I'm still mad I can't play Donkey Kong Country Returns, a platforming game, with the pad. You have to shake the damn remote,
Yeah.
the Wiimote to roll.
It was the
Oh,
same.
that
with,
was one of my biggest regrets. 'Cause
I
of
would-
that
Same-
feature.
I don't know. There's some contract on the Wii where you have to have some form of motion control or something. It's
And some games, even ship with classic controllers, or their special editions do, with the hey, maybe you should play it on this kind of controller instead thing in mind. I know that was true of Monster Hunter Tri, but
Well, you know
those
what's
games are few
interesting?
and far between.
We have just managed to come to a point where apparently what is happening at E3 is of so little value to the four of us that we started talking about Wii game controller schemes. Organically. It came out of nowhere. That is how exciting E3 is going to be this year. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap it up. So
Okay.
let's go down the list. Laz, say your goodbyes.
Goodbyes to you.
Excellent. Tiddles,
go away.
get off my lawn. Mooney, thanks for joining us today. Hopefully we can have you back in another time.
And why not Zoidberg?
And there's our Futurama reference for the day, right? Right? Yeah,
The
that one I
box
won't
says
edit.
no.
That'll work.
And that's me, Josh, signing off. Thanks a lot for listening, as always, and we'll talk to you guys after E3 so we can talk about how bored we were throughout all of E3. You know, that got me thinking. Maybe we should be crowdfunding the CoNcast. Or maybe we should be crowdfunding E3 at this point. Anyway, we're Caves of Narsh. Check us out at cavesofnarsh.com or any of our social media presences. Today, you listened to the Final Fantasy IV Fat Chocobo theme over and over and over again as Laz described crowdfunding. And here at the end, you're listening to the Blackjack theme from Final Fantasy VI. Talk to you later.